Farzin, this is important. Like what you're doing right now from this is probably investigating some false beliefs that other people have. And by doing it, they can also do the work. And it's very important because people are scared of this new thing, right? And they don't know, and they're from the other system. But if you couldn't attack this, if you tried China to shut it down, Operation Choke Point, Elizabeth Warren, and everything else in the US, you just put some Bitcoin developers in jail, right? On privacy tech. This is happening right now. And in all of these things, this kept going and nothing could stop it. What would your next move be? You'd try to co-opt it. You try to say, no, we're totally for it, right? Trust us inside the financial architecture. Banks can hold it and everything else. And then they would do the same thing that they would do with gold, right? They would, and then, and they would manipulate it in time. So you would expect that to happen. You'd know it has to happen. And lots of people would fall into that trap and not hold their own Bitcoin, not hold their keys, not understand it. And they would also be holding a paper claim on Bitcoin. If the entire existing system is based on a fraud, and all of the money for that fraud. So if you think about all of what's happened in Africa, South America, the drug deals and everything else, there's been all the changes in government, all the deaths, all the destruction that have been really the CIA ops.
Yeah, and it's done in US dollars.
If you think about Epstein, if you think about the Middle East, if you think about all of these things, they are powered by broken money. And then you wonder from this system, what about drug deals on this other system, right? Right? They wouldn't be able to use this other system because it's clean. I don't begrudge whatever somebody wants to do. If they want to measure their life in fiat currency, they can do whatever. I'm just telling you, for me, this isn't just about money. This is about a better world for my kids. This is about a world that is aligned with my beliefs that I'm going to contribute to. And so it's just a bigger why. You'd expect all the things that we take for granted today, you expect them to be natural, because they are natural. It's just a perception. All of these things are perception, and we try to gain more assets so we have more in a zero-sum game, right? And more things in a game we know is a zero-sum game. It's ludicrous.
People get to rule their first million, and then the government or the Fed just creates 50 billion in a day with a mouse.
Yeah.
I'm your host, Farzin Irani. Let's connect the dots. Welcome to Connecting the Dots, where signals speak, patterns reveal, and nothing is random. We aim to cut through the noise to expose what drives money, markets, and mindsets. Today we're joined by Jeff Booth, whose influential book, The Price of Tomorrow, has reshaped how many think about technology, money, and the future. His ideas challenge the foundations of our economic system and invite us to rethink what progress truly means. We're here to go past the headlines and dig into the signals, assumptions, and implications behind this thesis. Jeff, thank you for joining us.
No problem. Pleasure to be here, Farzin.
It's an honor, man. I've read your book quite a few years back, and it had quite an impact on me. And I understand quite a lot of the concepts, but I thought we'd bring you on so you could share some of your ideas with our audience, which is global. So let's get started. Your book essentially argues that technology is inherently deflationary. And in today's environment of persistent inflation, what truth do you think policymakers are still refusing to see?
Yeah, it's not just policymakers, it's everyone who's contributing to that system. And so let's start somewhere that's the first principle, and then we'll break that down. So first principle, the bedrock of of an understanding, and we'll build it back up. So the natural state of the free market is deflation. That is a fact. Now, what you just did, you nodded your head, right, is a subconscious reaction to something you know is true. Lots of people, when you first hear that, they'll nod their head, and let's just break it down. And so we live in a paradigm of we use things, we use products, services, and everything else, and every single new thing that competes against that paradigm has to create more value for us, or it goes extinct in the free market, right? Because we don't choose things that cost more and give us less value than what came before. We choose things that are more value to us. So we're an intricate part of a state of a market. Like, what is a market? It's us. It's us transacting with each other, creating value for each other, and we choose more value. So if we were part of a market that we always chose more value, and entrepreneurs, to be able to win, had to create more value for us, how could it be anything other than deflation? How could it not give us more value? Right? It has to. So it's a fact that it has to. Now, if you automated that market, if you brought the inventions that we create, AI, robotics, the Riverside app that we're using right now, every single thing that's created to be able to touch more people that we only use, and that was being able to do things faster, better, cheaper than you would expect. And that was moving, and the technology was moving on an exponential path to drive that abundance in our lives. Then you would expect prices to fall or value to increase at that rate, being in line with the natural state of order of a market. So what does that mean? And that has such big implications, far greater than what you first said, policymakers. What does that mean, right? It means we've never lived in a free market.
We haven't.
Never. We've never lived in a global free market. And that should shock you, right? Because you've heard things like capitalism is a free market, or communism, or then you're locked into a sense of purpose of who you are, an identity inside a control system that must stop the free market. So you're inside a zero-sum game, measuring everything from a zero-sum game, and you believe it's somebody else. Right. And that belief that it's not you and it's somebody else is what gives the power to the control system. And so the control system, or put it another way, let's break down the existing system, and that we've never lived in. But when money is lent into existence, so when you go to a bank, the money didn't exist. There's a false belief in the world that you're borrowing somebody else's money, they made money, but the money actually didn't exist when you go to the bank. They create the money when you take a loan, and you pay an interest rate on that money forever. And that perpetuates around the world. And that system where money is lent into existence must grow forever. You have to grow money forever. And so when people say deflation is bad, what they're actually talking about is deflation is bad from a credit-based system or a debt-based system, because deflation, which is really, really quite simple, I gain more value forever.
Yes.
Instead of I get value extracted forever, right? So if I gain more value forever in deflation, then the money that was lent into existence goes extinct. It goes to money heaven, right? And there is no more money. And so what is money in the first place? It's just an abstract concept for your time. And so if you lend money into existence, and you build a kind of people in servitude to that money in essentially in chains, bound in chains to that money, they will stay stuck in that system and won't know. And so these two things, and so you could now draw two parallels out of this. An inflationary monetary system cannot allow deflation, because then you get Great Depression or worse, every bank would fail. If you just kept allowing it, every bank would fail, everything would fail, the entire structure of society would fail. So a credit-based system or a debt-based system where money is lent into existence cannot allow deflation. And deflation is the natural state of a free market is deflation. So what I just did there right now, and for your audience, you might know this, but what I did for your audience is I set up two true statements, two factual statements that are in conflict with each other, right? And it sets up a cognitive dissonance in our brain, because we're trying to resolve what I said, which is the natural state of the free market, which a system that cannot allow it. So now we can go down both different systems, and we can understand why it is people get so confused, and why it might be them measuring from the wrong system, and what they can do about it over time. But ultimately that's the problem. Those two statements cannot coexist. Natural state. And you've never lived in a global free market. Some people have lived in a local free market, like the United States under the Constitution, for a time when everybody moved to the United States to take advantage of ideas, and the United States became the most prosperous nation on the world. For a time, that was the free market working, and that was around the Constitution, and why does that work, and why does that create prosperity, long-term prosperity? Because more ideas compete to provide value to other people.
Yeah, there's a good distinction you made there, and even saying that they're both facts, and the human mind struggles to comprehend them both. But as I've said on the show before, and to my audience as well, we weren't taught any of this at school for a reason. In fact, we've been taught the one way only, where inflation is normal. You're supposed to expect it, because if there's inflation, you also get a pay rise, and because it's just a natural phenomenon, supposedly, because that's not what they teach you in school. They don't teach you the way the system actually works. Well, they do teach you the way the system actually works based on their design, rather than, as you said, the way the free market should work. And you also quite nicely explained that debt has interest attached to it, and that is why they need to keep creating more money, which is why there's more inflation. Now, your book argues that deflation is the natural way, and if they build the system on inflation, which they don't want their system to collapse or break down, which one do you think wins in the longer term? Is that something that has to have a clean out every 80 or 100 years?
Yeah, so different question, and every reset of currency has always been actually the exact same thing. The global market has always been deflation, right? The global free market has always been deflation. And so when you're looking through all your history books and trying to pinpoint the root cause of the rise of wars and the destruction of societies, it's actually what I just described. Because the control system has to divide you, that there's some other enemy to retain zero-sum game, right? And typically what happens to us inside the control system is we vote for a different leader who divides us, and we take sides. And then when that can't be resolved from the same problem, creating the same problem, right? A system problem can't resolve a system problem. You have to create a greater enemy outside your borders and convince everybody it's their fault. And so you can see this in the way people are acting today, and all of the media they're consuming, and on both sides, on all sides, and they are inside that thing. And once that you even did it when it's the education system or it's this, we want to take sides within the system, blaming somebody else, when we ourselves aren't acting in accordance with the free market. What we are doing is all of our purchasing, everything else is inside that system, and we believe it's somebody else.
Okay. But the whole point is, if you're not taught any other way, you don't know better unless you go digging.
Yeah. So now let's pull on that thread a little bit. So what would you expect if I just had, and this is what I described in the book that would happen, right? What would you expect is one system was trying to to drive, the free natural state of the free market was trying to drive exponential abundance for you. Every year, even if you didn't work, you would get richer. Right? As the world worked for because every single actor in the free market has to create more value than what came before, or they fail. So that means every single person is actually working for you.
Yeah.
Right? That's what it would look like, and prices would fall. And if you had 8 billion people in service of 8 billion people, you can imagine what we would come up with and how fast that abundance would flow to all of society. And I'm not saying entrepreneurs, the free market would work perfectly. Entrepreneurs would constantly find problems. Any single margin opportunity was a problem to provide more value. And they would attack them to be able to create more value for society. And the output of that, the prices would fall at a crazy rate. Now, from a credit-based system that can't allow that to happen, that exponential productivity must mean exponential capture of that productivity. So it's just it's a mirror image. And so the capture of that productivity from the inflationary monetary system means an exponential rise in debt, which you see evidence of it all around the world, which an exponential rise of control from the biggest powers who are most incented to that, an exponential rise of political process being captured, an exponential rise of laws changing to centralize and monitor all your speech, right? Patriot Act and everything else. And from that, and every centralized system is inside that thing, and all participants are into that thing screaming at the vortex inside the vortex. That's what, and they don't know that they don't know that all of their time is being farmed inside that. And if you realized what AI would do to you in that, if it was from within the control system, it would drive your belief that you made a difference inside that against somebody else's belief that they made a difference inside that, to keep it to have you believe that that's the way the world looked, that's the way the world looked. So that we'll get to Bitcoin in a second, or maybe in time.
Yeah, we'll come later. Yeah.
But that's, you could just forget Bitcoin for a moment. Just say, what would it look like if these two things were the way that society was built, and then technology was driving at the rate it's driving? It would look exactly as you would expect it, exactly as it looks today, and so all participants inside it would just be very confused because of what I just said.
Yeah. Let's just dig a little bit deeper, because in the book you describe a world where technological deflation, and you've covered a little bit, is not the enemy but the solution. I just wanted to go a little bit deeper to explain to our audience, what does an economy look like when deflation is finally embraced instead of fought?
It literally means the first global free market that has ever existed. So before we would go to war to steal somebody else's gold, or or to their raw materials. And what inside the country at the top, say the sun never sets on the British Empire, inside there, especially if you're at the very top of that system, it looked like it was a beautiful, beautiful world, right? But it relied on slavery around the world, that you put into slavery to extract their labor and talents and materials to capture. And then what ends up happening is, as that slavery sits and people get worse and worse and worse and worse, eventually you have a rise up of a different power that does the same thing, right? And this was the way the world's always looked. And you protected those powers through military might, always. And the military might was paid for by the extraction of more and more people.
And the free money printing.
And exactly, and they didn't know they were in that system, and it was always exactly the same system. So, and that's why we go to war, to fight that, and that both parties do the same thing. Then we reset currencies, like after World War II, Bretton Woods, we reset currencies. Okay, it's on gold. We will not cheat anymore. That works for about 30 years, and everybody gets, we build these massive institutions. Let's not forget, celebrate Remembrance Day, because we killed tens of millions of people. People go through a song and dance about nonsense, and the whole thing starts over again.
Yeah, of course, it's a cycle. Everything is cyclical, right?
And the cycle is, the first principle of the cycle is the natural state of the free market is deflation.
So why do you think we've discussed this at the powers that we don't want deflation, even in our rear view mirrors? They don't even want it to hit us as a thought. And that's why central banks say, no, deflation is very bad. And they keep blaming the Great Depression as, look, what happened in the Great Depression, because there's deflation. They don't tell us the truth why that happened.
Yeah. So the central bank is a construct of communism, right? Because if you can control money, you control all things downstream from money. And if you can control money, you control laws. You control everything, because money is superordinate to laws. So and people race after the money, and they're playing in an incentive game that is exactly the worst for human beings, because they will always chase the money. They always say, "Oh, I won't take the money," and they'll take the money, right? And it creates this perverse incentive that people, even if you didn't and everyone else did, you're a loser in that system, right? So it's really hard to escape when you have an abstract concept, money, that's really trade between humans, that's being manipulated. Then everybody inside that system is being manipulated, and they don't know.
Yeah, it's a debt slavery system. Yeah.
It's literally a system that, so instead of saying people, I try to abstract this away, because it's so easy to not see yourself in it. It's easy to see somebody else as the villain, right? Whether it's the government, or today Carney or Trudeau before that in Canada, different people and different actors, would be Biden or Trump. But under all of these scenarios, in every single country, you see, no matter who's leading, an exponential rise of debt, right? Which must mean, if the free market is naturally deflation, an exponential rise of control. Has to, right? So and let's imagine a leader that came out tomorrow and said, "Listen, jigs up, whole thing was a mirage. Money is actually not there, right? We're going to allow the free market to work. And the cost of the free market working is every single bank is going to fail. All of your houses that you think are worth millions of dollars are zeros, right? And we're going to restart the board, right? Think that person would get elected?
No.
Exactly. So it's not them, it's us.
Because he's not lying, he's speaking the truth.
Exactly. We want to hear a bedtime story that we like, that matches our perception of reality. And most people's perception of reality is just that. It's a perception, is so far from the truth. And so they can't handle even what I'm saying right now. I'm sure you probably get comments that it can't be true, but when it is for sure true.
Yeah. It's exactly what I experienced, say, about 3 years back, when I started getting interviewed on a show called Money Talks in New Zealand. And I said, the banks create money out of thin air. People started writing in comments, what is he talking about? It's a lending institution, the deposit takers, they take our deposits and they lend them out. They don't understand how it works, where it's just magic money when you sign on the loan documents and they put it on the asset and the liability side of their balance sheets. But we've seen these banks do this again and again, but I call it a game of musical chairs. They'll flood the system with cheap money, whether it's the central banks or the banks lending into the economy. As you can see, house prices in Australia, New Zealand, Canada going crazy, the wealth effect, so to speak. And then I think musical chairs, when they create that short deflationary hit, this is not the system designed, the governed one which you're talking about. I'm talking about just like the artificial inflation. They create an artificial deflationary bust, so to speak, to take up all assets. Do you think those come in between, or
No, it's you have a system that is getting more and more, like the volatility in the system. it's just more and more volatile because it has to be more volatile because it needs more and more. It needs exponential liquidity against something that people can start to feel that's so broken. So they're looking for today. A really good example of seeing some of that would be AI, the AI bill. You need something to drive money into, to drive a new thing that's changed. But when you ask what, and I'm not saying AI isn't massive productivity, but prices in a free market trend towards to the marginal cost of production. So you have to ask what's a line of code cost to create other lines of code? Zero. And why most AI it's free today. Now, it costs a ton to train them. And all of the data centers and everything else is as it's training these, but I have yet to see where the money is going to be repaid for the money that's going to money heaven right now, because people aren't paying for the models at the type of rate, and because prices fall to the marginal cost of production. It's like building a massive factory to build digital calculators. We use calculators every day. They're free.
Hi guys, if you're getting value from what I share, please take a second to like this video and hit subscribe. It helps get these ideas in front of more people who need clarity in a noisy world. And if you know someone who would benefit, share it with them. Your support grows this community and keeps me creating content that makes a real difference. Thank you for being part of the journey, and keep connecting the dots. Yeah. Could you give us a couple of examples just for people who might not have read your book of why deflation is, how it actually works in a free market and why prices get lower and lower and lower because you derive more value because of technological advancement?
It's both, and you can see it in digital goods today, and you can see, so many people that have probably watched, they'll see some goods going up in price and some goods going down in price. So if deflation was bad, you would have never bought a computer or a TV or a phone, right?
Because it gets cheaper and better.
You'd never buy that because next year you have more value and by waiting. So it's insane to say I'd wait, right? You'll buy when you're ready to buy, and the free market has to compete to provide more value to you. So now when they're looking at these charts, education is going up, house prices are going up, healthcare costs are going up, and things that are automated through technology are going down. What they don't realize is the denominator for all of the things is broken money. So the price declines of what computers would be and phones would be and what healthcare would be and what houses would be extraordinary. But they're seeing it through a lens of some going up, some going down. Why are some going down? And I'm getting your question. Some are going down because the base layer of the free market is moving to technology, lines of code, and when they were physical goods, like we used to pay for a calculator, Texas Instruments calculator, big business, right? And then the first one on the iPhone cost money on the App Store. And that money created margin, right? It attacked somebody else's margin, created more value. And that margin created an opportunity for other entrepreneurs with just a line of code to create more value. And the next one was cheaper and better. The next one was cheaper and better. And until it was zero, entrepreneurs attacked and created more and more value in a calculator app that you use every day, right? That is free because it's a line of code. And so that's the value for the entrepreneur. What the entrepreneurs do is they attack the highest margin opportunities to create the most value for society, because then there's, and that's, and entrepreneurs swarm after them. So how do you stop that, right? You create regulation to protect people, to create monopolies. So all of the regulatory environment, the regulatory framework that protects the banks against, so they could steal your money, right? Protects food industry, so make you unhealthy, protects the pharmaceutical industry, protects it. These are the creation of the monopolies, right? It's the regulatory framework, because there could be no monopoly in a free market. It's impossible.
Yeah, because the best technology or the best product wins at the best price and the value.
And then what happens is that win creates margin, which everyone else attacks.
Yeah. And people go there, and then the next best.
They constantly go to the next and the next and the next, and it's an infinite process, because our minds, there's never been a period in history where the people in that period in history didn't think we know almost all the things we need to know. And then entrepreneurs constantly attack that thing that we know to create more value. But then once we see the value, we use the value.
Yes. Yeah. So I have a question for you. So we understand that technology is generally deflationary, but the monetary system they've created, because the debt has to be paid, they have to create more and more money, which is inflationary.
And so let's just correct that and then keep going with the question. The natural state of the free market is not generally deflationary. The natural state of the free market is deflation, for sure. Technology is an exponential lever to that. Meaning so you have to go in steps. Natural state of the free market is deflation. Exponential technology would mean exponential deflation.
Okay. So when you say the natural state is deflation, is that because, as we've just explained, there could be disruptive periods, there could be droughts, there could be shortages like we saw in COVID, or governments doing brain dead stuff and shutting borders, that could have that inflationary impact because of shortages or bottlenecks. But generally it's deflationary, and technology makes it hyper deflationary.
Now think about what you just said.
Yeah.
The government intervened.
Yeah, of course. I'm trying to explain it.
So again, every single thing that stops that is intervention of the free market. So yes, you can have intervention of a free market. You can close your borders and you can say nobody can compete in my market, and you can make prices whatever you want by just printing more money. But that works against the free market, right? You could run tariffs. You could run all of these things that continually coordinate. You can create COVID, which creates a supply chain shortage, and for a while you'll see prices go up because you've shut the market.
Yeah. And the reason I was coming back to the original question, now that the audience and I have pre-understood and got this reframed, is generally it's deflationary. Technology makes it more deflationary, so house prices should be cheaper. But I experience, since I'm getting closer to the 50 mark in a few years, for 50 years, house prices generally go up other than technology. So that means that generally everything should have been cheaper, but it's gone up so much. That means they must have created so much money to not only strike out the deflation, but to create the inflation, which steals value from us because we're debt slaves, or we have to give our hourly rate for a certain amount of dollars, and that is benefiting them or a certain few. And that's why they're fighting the system, right?
Yeah, and again, I try to get away from us, them, because it's all us.
Oh, sorry. Yeah, right.
And so, no, I know why you do, and why it's so easy to fall into that trap. It's so easy to think it's somebody else, which just incentives. So what would you do? So why does a house have value? So you're right. If you look at the numbers underneath, the house hasn't actually gone up at all. It should have gone down, right? And because every single thing in the house, all of the materials, if you look at a lumber mill today versus a lumber mill 100 years ago, there's way less labor in a lumber mill, right? Every single material and every single thing, it looks exactly the same, from the raw materials in mines that are completely automated today, right? Where they looked at it like before. So you'd think prices should fall of those things, just like other. So when you look at how much debt has gone up, it takes your breath away. And what we realize is the denominator I'm using to measure the world is a false denominator. It's just made up. It's just pieces of paper. You keep on making up exponentially more pieces of paper. Then measured against those pieces of paper, prices will appear to rise.
Yeah, exactly. So the more money they create is what raises the price of the limited amount of goods that we have in the economy.
Yeah. So here's a smoking gun as I went through the book, and you read this probably. So so I said, if I was right, you should see evidence, right, of being right, and you should have seen evidence as technology, internet, everything else. This exponential productivity wave. You'd expect it to be captured by an exponential rise of debt. So I looked in the preceding 20 years from writing the book. And and there was about $65 trillion of debt globally, all private corporate, everything, global debt in 1999 that rose to 250 trillion by 2019. 185 trillion of additional debt to increase GDP globally by 46 trillion.
I think it's sitting at 310 trillion
Oh,
now.
it's way more than that. It's way more than that. So the number is now almost double that. So when you see that, because it's missing things right now, Bank of International Settlements 3 years ago found $75 trillion in off-balance sheets items. So the number is so outrageous. But here's more important for Farzin. If you think that's outrageous and you're holding your house in value on top of a debt stack, and all assets in the world are 900 trillion, and they're tethered to a liability of about 500 trillion, and you believe in your house value, right? That's crazy, right? That is crazy, because it's just a piece of paper that's started. Now it'll go up relative to that piece of paper because more pieces of paper will be printed, but the impact of that, of what you're doing inside that decision, you don't realize the house will be taken back from you at some
Yeah,
point.
of course. Of course, most people don't know that. But something when you were speaking, I'm sorry I did get in there, the number which you mentioned, and this is what I think I've highlighted to my audience as well. They have to create almost, it's become an exponential effect now where there's $4 of debt for every $1 of GDP that they're taking on because the system is so overburdened with debt. So yeah, please carry on there.
GDP is the most ridiculous measure ever because it includes government spending, and government spending gets big portion of it. Is the most ridiculous measure anyway. So going back to what we said before, where is your calculator in the GDP number? Do you still get value from your calculator? It's ludicrous. It's free, right? Where is the AI right now that you're using that's almost free or free in your GDP number? And what you'll see from what I just said is every time you measure in it, you extend the problem from the system because there's less things to measure. There has to be more capture.
Yes. And they're trying to hold on to a failing system. So what do you say to people who argue that the current financial system can be reformed from within?
Can't be. So is it, I would ask them to say, uh, to do their own inquiry and say, name a problem. Name the biggest problem they care about. Forget what things I think about. The thing you care about the most, right? Whether it's the political divide, your side or the other side. Name something you could solve by arbitrarily printing more money. Every problem gets worse. There isn't a problem that you could solve. The only problem you could solve from that system is if you were the one printing and you wanted to be a dictator and control the entire world, and everybody was your slave. That's the only thing you could actually solve. If you're saying, how do I become the person who controls everything, all means of production, that's the only thing you could solve from that system.
Yeah, but even when they say we create money or the government gives US aid and all of that to solve hunger or poverty and stuff like that, people think governments are so generous. They don't realize governments also just take on more debt, whether it's from another country or whether it's issuing bonds or.
It's so much worse than that that I can't even. So I don't typically talk too much about the existing system because it's so much worse than that. Epstein is a part of it, right? All of these things had to look like that to be able to capture politicians and from a class. All of the things that you see, all of the terrible things that you see around the world that shock you, and that drive you to fear and believe that it's this person against this person. All of them are created by the same thing. It's so egregious to your belief system that it's so hard to challenge that, and you don't want to believe that. And by the way, what that must mean, potentially worse, is if we're contributing to that, then it's not them, it's us, which is a far that when I said cognitive dissonance that you have to go through and understand kind of it's a system change, right? And what this system would look like, what would you expect it to look like if it was based on theft and that exponential theft? You'd expect it to look exactly like it looks.
The way it is. Yeah. And that I've just interviewed the author of 180 Degrees, Unlearn the Lies You've Been Led to Believe. And that should be launched. And that covers a lot of all these stuff where we think this is normal, but it's not. And the monetary system contributes a lot to the global wars, the global warming agenda, all of that, the politicians, Epstein, all of that. So I've read his book. It was almost 800 pages, and we do a good hour and a half discussion on that. Now, we won't go any deeper into that because I do want to pick your brains on the stuff that's in your book. You often we've talked about the first order effects. You talk about the second order effects and exponential tech that you feel most people are still blind to because you are in that. You've got your hands fully in it. Could you talk us through some of that?
Yeah. So now technology. So yes, I've been in technology all my life. This is one of the reasons I saw this, because I couldn't understand with all my friends building these technology giants, including myself, and we were doing it by creating more value to society. And if it was everywhere, why weren't prices falling at that rate? That's what led me to the discovery of this. I needed to, and when I found the discovery of it, for 10 years I talked about it, and no one would take me seriously, including central bankers and politicians and like. And I was hoping somebody else would write the book, and then I worried about my kids' future, and I realized I had to write the book. I did not want to write the book. So by writing the book, I was going up against all of my friends who were in technology, right? Who were either willfully blind or worse, to a system that wasn't the free market, that wasn't, and that you could do extraordinary wealth, but that wealth had to come from capturing something that should be natural and benefit everyone. And so by writing the book, I had to go up against everything I knew and everything.
But that's the first. That's why you're a pioneer, Jeff. And that's what they say. People aren't going to fight or rebel against if their paycheck depends on it. They're not going to stand up to the system. It's someone like you.
Yeah. So then from there, and I put one paragraph at the end of the book about Bitcoin. And the question was really this: if you had a decentralized, secure, open, decentralized, secure protocol bounded by energy, and that couldn't be changed, and no, I'm assuming for a lot of your audience they're not deeper in Bitcoin yet, but if you just asked a different question, right, from what I asked before, if you had something that was decentralized, secure, open protocol bounded by energy, that the denominator couldn't change, and it was decentralized and secure, and it couldn't be broken, then what would you expect that to do? And you would expect it to be a perfect reflection of the free market and the exponential productivity that I described before, as long as it stayed decentralized and secure. The only caveat to what I just said, as long as it stays decentralized and secure. So what would you expect to happen? So now, if I measured in this protocol Bitcoin. Then I measured my house. You said houses go up. I measured my house. My house was 300 Bitcoin 5 years ago. My house is about 12 Bitcoin today. Right? It appears to go up in the other system, but it against the energy-backed protocol that can't be changed, it's showing the exact as it takes back the monetary premium that was in my house, right? And this new thing is imposing a discipline bounded by energy around the world. And so that now the first time I did that, so I thought when I wrote my book, I thought there was a 5% probability that Bitcoin would fail, that it wouldn't stay decentralized and secure. And I went through every type of attack vector possible on it. I spent 15,000 hours trying to kill it, right? And still do, trying to, where is that weak? Where is it vulnerable? And for people who don't know, they'll say, okay, quantum, or governments are going to stop it, or it's not private enough. And all of these things are really what they're saying is somebody else has agency instead of me, right? It's somebody else's deal. And as you go through that path on Bitcoin and you realize that you are part of it and you contribute to it and you run a node and all of these beliefs about somebody else fall away. And you're inside the Energy Act protocol that's decentralized and secure. Because why is it decentralized and secure? Because of the people building to it, running nodes, contributing, you're keeping that. And so you're actually, what's happening is you're in the first global free market that's ever existed. And you're both a participant and you're a contributor participant. And your energy is inside something that can't be stolen anymore. And so what would that world look like versus the other people who were living, or even Bitcoiners who were converting that to a piece of paper to measure Bitcoin?
Jeff, I want to push back on a couple of things, but before I do that, because you're trying to measure your house in Bitcoin. Again, Bitcoin can be volatile, so obviously ours could take more Bitcoins or fewer Bitcoins and all of that kind of stuff. As I've told people, you measure your wealth in maybe ounces of gold or Bitcoin or silver, not just the US or the fiat currency, because the fiat currency is the moving pole, right? That is not a measuring stick that you want to measure anything with. But I believe when Bitcoin came around, and this is just me just getting your thoughts on it, because I've openly said I had the same concerns as some of your listeners do. Bitcoin, the concept was brilliant. From what I've heard, Bitcoin was created by either the NSA or the CIA just to get, this is exactly why I'm bringing this up, because I want to get people used to the idea of cryptocurrency, because now we see the CBDC movement and the digital ID coming. They have to put it into our consciousness and say it's safe and secure. So I just want to bring up you said the right thing. If you're in the node, yes, I understand. My biggest concern is two things. Firstly, if your key is known, they can see every transaction that you have. And the second thing, if they just said, just like the confiscated gold, if they said, if you have Bitcoin and you don't hand it in to the government because it has been confiscated on certain exchanges, then you could go to jail. Would some people rather go to jail just to hold on to the Bitcoin? I'm not saying there's any problem with Bitcoin.
So because now remember what I said before, I've spent 15,000 hours on this topic, right? So I don't expect this to land the first time for people, right? And it's going to take some time because they're in a belief system that's trying to get them to be scared, right? And so everything they're reading, everything they're saying, because if they're not scared and they move their time, they're out of a control system. So, right. So I understand. And I was one of those people, right, that did the same thing. And every single person who kind of goes down was one time a non-believer Bitcoin that then overcame. I only, just like I talked about the financial system, just like I talked about the deflation, what was coming, I also did the same amount of work, more work here, because that thesis is so critical. I said, if it stays decentralized and secure, it doesn't matter. Nothing else matters, right? Nothing. Because you have this energy-backed system imposing every 10 minutes a new block. So when you said measure house and gold or the volatility of it and everything else, now if you were trying to kill this, you would expect, and all money was all this other system, you would expect every game possible to try to kill it, short squeeze it, paper Bitcoin. Like if you looked at gold, gold has been bastardized by derivative contracts on top of it. Why it can't be used as money? Because it always gets cheated, right? And so you would have to expect all of those same things to happen to Bitcoin. You'd have to expect, if we've never lived in a global free market and 5,000 years of this control system has always looked the same, right? Then my head goes to, the attacks are so much higher than what you just asked. They have to be, right? Because we're part of that attack, right? Because we're part of our beliefs inside that other system is we're easily convinced that it's somebody else, and so we have to be part of the attack. So now go into that. It doesn't actually matter if the CIA or the NSA created it. Why do I know that? Because my node runs all the code, as do others. Now, imagine the CIA creating the thing that was the demise of the CIA. So I suspect that wasn't the case, right? Like, right? Because if they created the thing that takes all of the power away from the manipulation of money, all the dark pools, right, and gave it back to society, that seems like a crazy thing to build, right? Unless you had a rogue operator that.
But if they were Satoshi and they were holding on to millions and billions of.
But again, the amount of 1 million Bitcoin, and the amount that's never moved, right? But the amount of Bitcoin you have, so the amount of money you have in the other system is directly proportional to the amount of power judges you can buy, politicians you can buy.
Yes.
The amount of money in this system is not. You have with 1 million Bitcoin, you have no more vote than I have. You have 1 vote with your node. If you run 2 nodes, you can have 2 votes, but you have no more power. It's completely distributed and decentralized. And so, and all of those nodes, so every single transaction has to go through my node, right? And every 10 minutes, I audit it. I audit the entire 16 years of the time chain. And it says, did people participate with the rules that you agreed to? And if they didn't, it invalidates it. So there's one rule in Bitcoin: don't try to cheat Bitcoin. You only cheat yourself, right? And because you could have just contributed to it, and then people try to create all these other coins to try to cheat, and so. But I'm getting ahead of myself. Okay. Technologies, as we've already discussed, technologies are winner take most until another technology comes along, which is winner take most again and winner take most again. And so now imagine, you don't have to imagine very hard. Imagine we've always lived in broken money. In this new, what we thought was a technology, right, came around, and all people did is just held it. They didn't do anything. And it started to, and they appeared to get rich versus these people. So in the free market, what you would expect is this thing needs to do more, right? This technology needs to do more. And you'd have people like Vitalik, the founder of Ethereum, try to change Bitcoin, but the nodes wouldn't let him, right? And then what he would do is say, I'm going to create a new Bitcoin, and it's going to be a better Bitcoin. It's going to be able to transact faster. It's going to be able to do everything else. And then you'd expect that explosion of other people saying, I have a better and better Bitcoin, right? Because we think in technologies to explode to millions of coins, right? And you'd expect every single person to get caught in that nonsense. because they weren't deep enough on what was actually happening. They were trying to get rich in the other system, right? And you want and instead, what is, and protocols aren't technologies. Protocols are winner take all, and protocols come in layers. And so the internet started in late 60s by DARPA.
There you go. That was another technology that was started by DARPA, wasn't it? Regardless of what's happened afterwards. Yeah.
But it doesn't matter, because the kernel of that technology was a defense technology that could keep communications up in a nuclear holocaust. And the kernel of that technology had to be so narrow that it allowed that to happen. And the bigger it was, would create more of an attack vector. Because, but now that it was open source, or it was an open technology or open protocol, it allowed other people to build on top of it. And it came in layers. So some of the things you're asking about right now, you have no idea, because you're not inside the system like I am.
No, I'm not.
Those are perceived risks from your state of view, because you're living in the other world. You're measuring everything from the other world. But privacy on Bitcoin on layer 2 and 3 have already they already exist. If you could download Fedi on your phone, and you could create up your own federation, or join another federation, and you could have complete privacy in communications and money on top of Bitcoin right now. That it may be the only privacy in communications out there from a centralized and why? Because it's being built on top of a decentralized secure ledger, and it's extending the functionality. And if what would the free market value in a world that was going the other way, right? And everything was being centralized, and people didn't know that they were contributing to it. What would open up is a crazy opportunity to provide these people value, the escape valve. So all that's happening in Bitcoin is what I just described. And when you're in it and you're contributing to it, watching the all of the other participants contribute to it, and you're watching the other thing too, all of these people worried about it. You can't, okay. Like when
They're going to be worried about it. Obviously, that's why, in fact, they say the whole purpose of Bitcoin is kind of lost with these ETFs and BlackRock's coming in. I've also heard people say that they're trying to, as you said, bastardize the system, which already happened with all the other cryptocurrencies, which are not Bitcoin. Obviously, Bitcoin is the only true, it's like the gold. It is the true system that's going to help us fight their system. But let's say, for example, just coming back to that one, 2 questions, I'll just ask you. If they said, people, you hold Bitcoin, hand it in, or you go to jail, what do you think most people would do? And be mindful that we're still in their system, and they're the ones with the guns, and they're the ones making up the stupid rules and regulations and the laws, as we saw during COVID as well. And the simple thing is, if they just crash it down to 5.
Let's go first. That's why privacy is critical.
Yeah. Which you mentioned. Okay. Yeah.
And it's already, and that's why it had to exist on top of Bitcoin. Had to. Otherwise, at some point, it would lose its decentralization and security. Why would it lose its decentralization and security? What you're talking about is, if you couldn't kill Bitcoin, right? And remember, I think through this probably at a level that many haven't, right? Because my premise was it would be killed, because we've never lived in a free market, right? So my premise is I'm not defending it from a point of not doing the work to defend it. I'm defending it from doing the work and realizing how powerful it is.
I don't deny it's not powerful, and I'm not attacking it. I just want to get my head through it, because
Farzin, this is important. Like what you're doing right now from this is probably investigating some false beliefs that other people have. And by doing it, they can also do the work. And it's very important, because people are scared of this new thing, right? And they don't know, and they're from the other system. But if you couldn't attack this, if you China tried to shut it down, Operation Choke Point, Elizabeth Warren, and everything else in the US, you just put some Bitcoin developers in jail, right? On privacy tech. This is happening right now. And in all of these things, this kept going and nothing could stop it. What would your next move be? You'd try to co-opt it. You try to say, no, we're totally for it, right? Trust us inside the financial architecture. Banks can hold it and everything else. And then they would do the same thing that they would do with gold, right? They would, and then, and they would manipulate it in time. So you would expect that to happen. You'd know it has to happen. And lots of people would fall into that trap and not hold their own Bitcoin, not hold their keys, not understand it. And they would also be holding a paper claim on Bitcoin, right? Just like has happened on gold. You'd expect that it would have to happen. If I was on the other side saying, how do I stop that? I would say, you have to co-opt it. You have to say you're so for it, right? Right. So what would you do on this side of the ledger if you knew? You'd know that you needed privacy tech. You'd know that the technology of this scale had to develop in a private and secure way. 4 years before that attack surfaced, you have to have this so bolted down. And what I'm describing is people have no idea how bolted this down this is, and they're still measuring it because protocols come in layers, and you can't see what's available on the next layer until the layer is there, right? Nobody would have thought from TCP/IP in the beginning of the internet that it would rise to what the internet is today, and this conversation. They wouldn't know that their entire stack is on top of that and it gained more and more functionality. What's happening in Bitcoin is you're rebuilding the internet from energy. You're literally rebuilding an entirely new energy system from the bottom up, and the bottom is energy. All life is energy. Bottom up against this other system that has a break from energy to a manipulated system to it. And this other system is being built in real time, and we're observers and participants of the build of that.
When you said it was bottom up compared to their system, which is top down, takes a few clicks, mouse click, and suddenly we have a few $1 billion, right? Coming out of nowhere.
Here's the crazy thing that's so powerful. By contributing your time into the world that I'm saying, you're doing two things simultaneously. You're removing your money and everything else from the other system, and you're extending. I spend in Bitcoin every day.
Yeah.
I'm building businesses on top of Bitcoin. We run the biggest venture fund in Bitcoin. And we're building businesses. So I get to see all of this emergence of what the internet, what the new internet will look like by solving the free market problems that exist from a centralized control structure. And anybody can join, right? There's in a jail cell screaming at the warden, and the jail cell door is open and they could just walk over.
Yeah. The reason I'm asking you these questions also, because yes, I haven't gone into the nodes and all of that, but some of the skepticism comes, like Bitcoin is such a great thing that has happened for humanity. But the skepticism comes because we know the lawmakers and the governments will fight it tooth and nail, or as you said, co-opt it, till I think where they'll get it to a stage where they're ready to hang it. So just coming to my second question, the one other concern, and because you're on it, I'm asking you, is let's say, for example, you have 10 Bitcoin, from which you got 5 from me, and I got those 5 from a third party who was a drug dealer, and none of us knew about it. They can confiscate your Bitcoin saying it is based on that drug activity. How true is that I've heard? Is that possible?
This is why privacy is important, right? So so all of these things. So what's the worst thing about Bitcoin? Your enemies are going to use it and make it stronger for you, right? That's the worst thing about Bitcoin. Now, when you say drug dealer and a lot of the beliefs you would have inside the existing system, if the entire existing system is based on a fraud, and all of the money for that fraud, so if you think about all of what's happened in Africa, South America, the drug deals and everything else, there's been all the changes in government, all the deaths, all the destruction that have been really the CIA ops.
Yeah, and it's done in US dollars.
If you think about Epstein, if you think about the Middle East, if you think about all of these things, they are powered by broken money. And then you wonder from this system, what about drug deals on this other system, right? Right? They wouldn't be able to use this other system because it's clean, right? So, but I understand
No, but that would be the excuse to try and confiscate it off you, is what I'm saying, right?
and why privacy had to exist, right? And so all of these things had to exist before and there is not a every centralized system in the worst places in the world, right? So if money wasn't superordinate to laws, then you'd expect the worst places where money is most broken to have the best laws protecting citizens, right? So what you see is the exact inverse. And when that happens, the free market still works. When they tell you you can only use this money, there's a black market rate for money, right? So in all of these dystopian, centralization cannot work. It's never worked. It won't work because centralization comes from extraction of everything that is the free. It comes from extraction of you. And as you realize you are a part of that, you move out no matter what. And that creates value, and it's always created value. So as people today are in that centralization, you could just ask yourself, how much of this am I going to bear? How much am I going to be inside this until it's time for me to move out? And the sooner you move, the more the richer your life will become in the new system, because you're just early.
But that is people moving out. I want to ask you one question, which I've heard Luke Groman mention, and he doesn't think we'll do it, but let's say America, because the talk of the town is that the countries like China, Russia, India have accumulated a lot of gold. America would be better off going to a Bitcoin standard. Do you think that would be possible or considered?
So U.S. probably should, but it would take them back. If they really did, it would take them back to the Constitution, life, liberty, freedom, right? It would take them back to America before most people know that America is today, right? Which is really a different type of control system. It would look like the founding fathers that decided America, because you'd have a free market system, and the Constitution was based on. Now, China can't allow that. So if you created that free market system, and just remember, China has a better control system than the US. And so if you try to Patriot Act and all of these things to rip out the free market, and you create a different control system in the US, even if it were possible, the states will break off. There'll be civil war before that happened. But if you could make that happen, you're not going to beat China with a different control system. The only way to beat that, to truly beat it, is to be the free market.
Hi guys, if you're getting value from what I share, please take a second to like this video and hit subscribe. It helps get these ideas in front of more people who need clarity in a noisy world. And if you know someone who would benefit, share it with them. Your support grows this community and keeps me creating content that makes a real difference. Thank you for being part of the journey, and keep connecting the dots. But don't you think we're going through that? Well, through history and cycles that we've talked about, the two global superpowers collide anyways. And the way I see it is, come around 2032-ish, in the next 6 or 7 years, this plays out a certain way where China then becomes the financial capital of the world. It seems to be happening along those lines.
So I think they'll try, but to be able to do that, they would have to open everything, right? They would have to, in fact, they would have to be the purchaser of the world, and they have to allow their manufacturing to go everywhere else in the world, right? So having having a reserve currency that is a world currency creates these problems.
Yeah, of course. Yeah.
So, and why would they create these problems? Because it's for every buyer, there has to be a seller. So the global surplus has to be zero, right? The global, and so if you have one country that is the currency, then you have other countries lowering their labor costs relative to that, so that they can have the manufacturing, and then you have to be the buyer of everything.
I didn't mean China going to a global reserve currency. I think the US dollar might not lose a global reserve currency, but it might lose the global reserve asset status, where there's a lot of people talking about what could be the next global reserve asset. Is it Bitcoin or is it gold? Because the US treasuries are losing out.
Yeah, I think those two could be there for a while, but people are measuring Bitcoin like it's gold, and it's a protocol. It's a network protocol that can move around instantly all around the world in privacy. So it's not like gold in that way. So then now go, why does a financial system need assets?
Don't.
Because you can't store your money in money.
Yeah. So would you say Bitcoin is an asset or is it actual money?
So it can be whatever you want it to be. Like Michael Saylor says it's an asset. It can be an asset too, but you can now store your money in money. And because you can store your money in money, it's demonetizing all the other assets that you couldn't. Like a house, you could just say, why do you store your money in or your value in houses that then people don't live in anymore because they're a financial instrument? You do that because it protects you from money that you know is broken.
And it's going to depreciate by the hour.
Why do you hold assets? You hold assets.
Yeah, to store the value. I get that, but isn't that why gold was also money? That was also wealth and money, and you're saying Bitcoin is also wealth and money?
Yeah, and so gold was for a time, but it couldn't translate around the world at the speed of light.
Yes.
It became centralized, and then paper instruments on top, and then the asset was used to create the financial system, right? And then we think about assets in a different way, and we really think about assets primarily because you can't store money in money.
Yeah.
Right now, you can store money in money, and you can trade it. Like I could trade you right now in a complete private way, and nobody could do anything about it.
Yeah, of course. Of course.
Human to human transition all around the world.
And that is the system that they hate because they have no visibility, no control, and that's why they want the digital ID and the CBDCs. Do you think that is something that is going to come up against Bitcoin? The CBDCs is something.
So Tether, all of these things, stable coins, like where do they gain their stability?
I know. Why do they even call it stable coins when they're anything but stable?
Guaranteed loss coin. It gains its stability by having the same loss rate as the US dollar or whatever the coins. It's literally a guaranteed loss coin, just like the Patriot Act isn't the Patriot Act. It's a surveillance state. And so all of these things create more things that people will take risks on, and they will do because of money, and they'll get co-opted by that system, and lots of people will, but it won't change Bitcoin at all. Right. So
What's the one belief about money or progress you wish people would unlearn?
the first one I said, the natural state of the free market is deflation. You could live in a world where eventually 8 billion people are in service of 8 billion people. And we all get wealthy from the ideas that generated from all of us. And then I would ask, if that's true, why don't you take steps to do that?
Yeah, but Jeff, I'm just going to push back on one. 8 billion people trying to serve 8 billion people. We don't all have the same talents, and not 8 billion. Or we can see we all have different talents, all have different intellectual capabilities and all that kind of stuff. Even if it was 1 billion trying to serve 8 billion, and the other 7 billion knew they could get the fruits of what the 1 billion were doing, that would still be deflationary. That would still create a better world for all of us, wouldn't it?
I'm just saying, so why do we believe we have more talent than somebody else? We believe we have more talent than somebody else because we were living it. We were the exploiters of others.
I did not mean it in that sense. What I mean is, let's say,
I know what you mean, but here's what I'm getting at. It doesn't matter if in a fair playing field, your genius is different than me. We live in an and it doesn't actually matter. And you don't need to work, but you could provide value in a totally genius way that I have no idea, right? We can't know remember, we think the world looks like this, and the genius always comes from outside. If we lived in a fair playing rules that nobody could cheat, then how many Einsteins would we find that today are working in a cobalt mine that we have no idea they exist and they could serve us?
oh no, I totally agree on that. What I was just trying to say was, because when we talk about brilliance and technology and stuff, there might be a CEO of a technology company who might know how to write code, but he's not getting paid to hit a baseball, and he cannot hit a baseball like a baseball player who gets paid millions, or Novak Djokovic who knows how to play tennis brilliantly and makes millions. Everyone has different talents, and everyone needs to be what I call the self-actualization movement. When I started off this whole Success Simplified, it was, imagine if money was not something you had to go and force yourself to do a stupid 9 to 5 job that you hate just to pay the bills. And that is exactly that world that I want to live in, where people can actually self-actualize rather than having to be a slave in this system over here. So I'm not saying anyone's smarter than or dumber, but yeah,
Wait, like it doesn't actually matter what you do, right? When the whole world is working for you and you're working for the whole world,
exactly.
it's just a fair system that, so our consciousness arises from, when you said self-actualization, our consciousness must also arise from the system we inhabit, right? And so you would expect a whole bunch of people to be locked in a belief system that is a lower consciousness belief system from a system that has to impose that on them.
Mm. And create a low vibrational
Low
field for
vibration
them, right?
around the world, fear, coercion, control. You'd expect it to look exactly like it looks from a system that it must look like that. It's just a mirror image of the system.
Yeah. So now the system of obviously starting to break down and it's getting exponential. Just one quick question for someone wanting to protect their wealth in this system that's losing coherence, not the asset, but what frameworks or mental models should they adopt?
So I had to ask myself on this, and first I wanted to understand every risk on Bitcoin. I said the 15,000 hours, and as I was going through that uh, premise, I went, "Wow, this is insane!" Right? I'm actually have a hedge, and I'm scared of this thing that most of my time is in the other system, making it stronger, and I'm talking about this to everyone in the world. And I went, wow, that's just a massive hypocrisy in myself. And until I saw the hypocrisy in myself, that literally I had a hedge, even though I knew all this and I'd taken, and I moved all my time to it. I couldn't see what the life looks like now inside of the new system because I was still had a foot in each thing. And I didn't want to admit it was me. Right. And so, um, in that, because the question really is coming down to it is, and then I had to ask myself, even if it all ended, if it all went to zero, if I was wrong, if I did this, would I choose this adventure anyways, whether it aligned with who I was? And the answer is simple yes. I would do this over and over and over again. Nothing's going to stop me. The way I know it's not going to zero is nothing is going to stop me or a whole bunch of other people I know inside this from bending reality to this world that is abundant.
Yeah. I totally agree. Yeah.
And so and what I realized in that is it wasn't everybody else. It was me. It was my agency that I was giving away before. I was giving away for fear of how do I protect my wealth? And if I had asked the exact same questions, by the way, and it's a crazy thing. As you go deeper and deeper and deeper, if you ask the same questions about risk to the system you're in, you'd see it was all risk. You'd see your house has that much risk. You'd see every asset that you think is safe inside that risk has way more risk than giving your energy. But it doesn't appear to have the risk because you're measuring it from the system that has all the risk.
Yeah. And because everything is measured in the fiat currency, which is the derivative, everything is risky.
And then your relationships and what ends up happening is if everything was acting inside that system. Now I don't get mad at people if they want to stay there, because this takes time to unlearn, right? It takes time to learn a new system and understand how they're a participant. So everybody in their own time. So there's some people in Bitcoin who want to yell at everybody all the time, right? It's just, this would naturally be a complicated process because it's the first time in history we've ever been able to contribute to something that would look like this.
Yeah. When can I ask you one more thing, because you mentioned Broken Money quite a few times. That's obviously a book also by Lynn Orden, who's one of the other partners with your Ego Debt Capital. And I've heard her say Bitcoin and gold. Why not Bitcoin and gold? And I've heard Luke Gromen, who I also follow and respect a lot, say Bitcoin and gold. Um, I think I heard Luke Gromen on one interview in the last couple of months where he was pushed, say, if you could only pick one asset. He said, I wouldn't want to, but he still picked gold. So from our conversation, what I'm getting is you've just gone all in Bitcoin and gone, it's not just for the wealth. I'm actually going to transact and live my entire life in my ecosystem in Bitcoin. I have nothing to do with fiat currency anymore.
Yes. And I don't begrudge. Luke is a really good friend of mine. You can imagine Len's a really good friend of mine. I don't begrudge whatever somebody wants to do. If they want to measure their life in fiat currency, they can do whatever. I'm just telling, for me, this isn't just about money. This is about a better world for my kids. This is about a world that is aligned with my beliefs that I'm going to contribute to. And so it's just a bigger why. It's a bigger why for me, and it doesn't need to be, right? It doesn't need to be for anybody else. They can do whatever they want. If they want to measure, I don't measure my success in money.
Great. Great. Because I'm going to ask you that question at the end anyways. Your work is often described as a wake-up call, obviously, and this is why I appreciate the conversation you're having with me. You were one of the pioneers when you wrote this book and stuff. It is a wake-up call. What do you hope your core legacy will be as this transition plays out?
When I said or here's a better way to say this. I don't need a legacy. I don't need anything. If I touched one person and they in turn touched other people and they in turn touch other people, that's the way that this should look. Like I don't actually never wanted the fame, fortune, anything else from this. I would just gladly just ride off into the night, and this is going to emerge, and it's not just me, right? This is tons of people. If you realize what's happening here.
Yeah, there's a movement. Yeah.
It's there. The point is there is no one person.
No. But obviously, the book came out early on in the piece, and that's what I meant. It is a movement. There's lots and lots of people on it who want a better world for the future generation. And it's not just about the money, but the money is the core reason why some of the things that are happening in the world are happening right now. And as they say, change the money, change the world. Uh, People like yourselves are trying to have an impact. And as you said, even at Ego Death Capital, I think you guys are building an ecosystem to just not have Bitcoin as money, but to have it as something that other things can be built around it to be a way of life, which yeah.
And that's what's happening. And when you go to El Salvador, and when you go to some of these communities in Africa, and when you go to, when you see total circular economies that are completely outside of this, getting wealthier and wealthier, and you see the kids playing, and you see what it looks like, and you see the fresh food, and you see it, it, if you weren't a part of that, it's so hard to believe through traditional media and such, it looks like this. But when you're actually on the ground in these places and you see, I've been to 85 countries, and what I've always recognized is when you actually meet the people, we're all the same hopes, same dreams, same. We're, we're being led to believe that we're not, and it doesn't look like that. And when you're actually living inside that system, you see more and more of it. You would expect to see more and more of it if you were living completely in an honest protocol. What would you expect to see? You'd expect to see over time more honesty.
Yeah. Honesty, more freedoms, people being more happy.
Yeah. You'd expect all the things that we take for granted today, you expect them to be natural, because they are natural. It's just a perception. All of these things are perception, and we try to gain more assets so we have more in a zero-sum game, right? And more things in a game we know is a zero-sum game. It's ludicrous.
People get to rule their first million, and then the government or the Fed just creates 50 billion in a day with a mouse.
Yeah.
What was the use of that? And obviously, you get interviewed quite a bit. So this is one question I just thought out of the blue. What question do you wish more interviewers asked you, but they never do?
I don't know. I feel like I think since I wrote my book, I've probably been on 2,000 podcasts. And so I feel like for me, I wonder why people even want to talk to me anymore, because I feel like I said the same thing so many times.
No, but that's the same thing. It's, as you said, it's a ripple effect, right? Different podcasts, different audiences. It just gets to different countries and different groups. You'll be surprised how many, I'm surprised in Australia and New Zealand how much of the older generation is also paying attention to Bitcoin, because it's just something where they realize that gold is still a physical asset and could be taken away or clamped down on again, whereas Bitcoin is anonymous. Anyways, we'll leave that just the last towards the end. People get to know Jeff on a personal basis. If readers could just take one idea away from your book, what should it be?
The natural state of the free market is deflation, and they are an integral part of it.
Okay. And because this show is called Connected the Dots, and I interview people who write books about stuff that's going on, everything, what advice do you have for people who are afraid of speaking up or thinking differently?
The dots are us, right? We live in, and we are all connected. We are, if you took your two parents, the four grandparents, the 8 great grandparents, and you took all of their hopes, dreams, challenges, everything else that created you, and then your fractal of your life and everything else that led you to this moment. If you go back in mine, same thing. All of the things, all of the books I read, they read, everything else. This moment right now, this is actually the only moment that actually matters. Right? This one right now, where two people interact and they can both change away from this moment. And the future is written from this moment. We come into these moments so wanting to protect our identity of this past that we're actually not typically open to the moment, right? So that is the connection to all of us. It's a connection. And so if you ask that if that connection was being broken by money being distorted, that forced us to be so close, so guarded, so everything else, and then you wouldn't experience life as richly as you could. And so what I hope people come away with is they are all connected. We are all connected. That you can literally make a 0 to 1 moment in this moment and change everything in the future. And you are an integral part of it, not an observer of other people doing it.
Exactly right. That was brilliantly said, mate. And This is why I love what you're doing, and I love the concept of Bitcoin, because even when we saw during COVID and the Canadian truckers, there's so many people who wanted to say so many things, but they control us through the money. And if we can change this monetary system and make it work, humanity is going to be abundant on the other side of this. I truly believe. Hey, Jeff, where can listeners go to engage with your work further and get to know more?
Probably at EcoDeath is probably the best. EcoDeath Capital is where we're funding this ecosystem, or the protocol and this ecosystem. I have a website. I don't just that I keep it for books I've read and everything else. But jeffbooth.ca, and I would say if you're following me on social media, I'm not on very much anymore. I'm just on Nostr, which is protocol on top of it, Bitcoin, decentralized since decentralized. But if you're following me somewhere, please look up at my in on Nostr specifically. Look up my pub key on my website to make sure it's me. And don't follow me in other things. I'm not on Instagram. I'm not on Facebook. I'm not on a bunch of these things. So, but other people are. There, and so if I change a public address, I'll put it on my website. Otherwise, it's not me. And so, I will never ask you for money. So, too many.
Yeah.
Again, too many people like people use my name and try to scam people all the time.
And unfortunately, that's happening with X and Instagram. It's like the real tick and all of that. The world we're living in is just going a bit. But Nostr, did you say?
That's why I've moved away from all of these.
Yeah. Yeah. I'll put a link. I'll get the links and I'll put most of the links down for you. Hey, Jeff, obviously, I run a consultancy called Success Simplified. So I finished the podcast on this. How does Jeff define success?
Impact on others, positive impact on other people.
Beautifully said. Hey, Jeff, thanks for your time. We will leave it at that. Thank you for joining us on Connecting the Dots. If this conversation challenged you, inspired you, or made you think differently, like it and share it. And stay tuned for more voices that push boundaries and reshape perspectives. Until next time, keep connecting the dots.